I want you to picture a really specific scenario for a second. Um, you are at a house party.
Okay.
The music is loud. People are laughing. The vibe is just perfect. Everyone is totally in the moment.
Yeah.
But there is this one person standing near the edge of the room. And they aren't killing the mood or anything. They aren't sulking, but they are scanning.
They're the ones watching the candles near the curtains.
Yes, exactly.
Ha.
They noticed the extension cord for the DJ booth was a tripping hazard, like 10 minutes before anyone even walked near it. They felt the tone of a conversation in the corner shift from a friendly debate to actual aggression before a single voice was raised.
That is the person who smells the smoke before anyone else even realizes there is a fire.
Right. And while everyone else is thinking, relax, have a drink, this person is mentally calculating the quickest exit route, just in case.
Yeah.
Today, we are decoding that exact person.
Yeah.
We are diving deep into the SFFN, which is also known as the crisis sensor.
This is one of the most fascinating and, frankly, one of the most vital profiles we're going to look at. It comes from the Max Energy ME80 personality assessment system, and it's a profile that gets unfairly labeled, honestly. People call them pessimistic or anxious. But as we dig into the report today, we are going to find that they are actually the architectural pillars of safety for any group they belong to.
So our mission today is to decode this crisis sensor. We're going to look at not just what they do, which is warn us of danger, but why they do it. We really need to understand the operating system behind the behavior. Because, let's be honest, if you live or work with an SFFN, they can sometimes feel like a buzzkill.
They really can. But by the end of this deep dive, you will realize why you would be completely lost without them.
Before we get into the actual wiring of the SFFN, we need a quick primer. We're pulling this from the Max Energy ME80 system. For the listener who maybe hasn't caught our previous deep dives, what exactly are we looking at here? Is this just another which Harry Potter house are you kind of test?
No, it's a bit more mechanical than that. The Max Energy ME80 system is a comprehensive framework for understanding human energy. So it doesn't just slap a label on your personality. It looks at the actual mechanics of how you process the world.
Like looking at the engine under the hood?
Exactly. Or the source code of a computer rather than just the icons on the desktop. It analyzes your internal values, your emotional triggers, your decision-making logic, and how you actually manifest action in the real world.
Okay, so let's look at the source code for this specific profile. The name alone, crisis sensor, is pretty intense. It sounds like a piece of military hardware. What is the core identity here? How do they define themselves?
Well, the report defines the SFFN as a warning-type personality. Their core declaration, their identity, is essentially, I sense looming danger before others, buying the first window to respond.
Buying the first window to respond. That's a really specific way to put it. It implies that time is the currency they are trading in.
That is the crucial insight right there. Their key characteristic is this high alert sensitivity to environmental changes.
Yeah.
They maintain order within unease. So where you might just see a normal Tuesday morning staff meeting, they're actively scanning for anomalies.
The source material actually mentions some specific triggers for this. Things like tone shifts, process loosening, and rhythm imbalance. Can we unpack those a bit? Because process loosening sounds a little like corporate speak.
Sure. Think of it this way. If a standard operating procedure at work gets skipped just once, most people think, oh, good, we saved 5 minutes. It's more efficient.
Right, no harm, no foul.
But the SFFM thinks the integrity of the system is compromised. If we skip step A today, we will skip step B tomorrow, and by Friday, the server crashes.
So for them, a small slip isn't just a slip, it's a symptom of a collapsing structure.
Exactly. These aren't just minor annoyances. They trigger rapid internal alarms. It is visceral. It physically bothers them when the rhythm is off.
I have to ask, though, to an outsider, or maybe even to a spouse, that can look like worrying about absolutely nothing. It looks like catastrophizing.
Yeah.
How are they actually processing this in their brain? What is the control mechanism here?
Here is where we have to distinguish between anxiety and simulation. The SFFN possesses a global view, but they process it by working backward from worst-case scenario.
Working backward.
Yeah, they aren't looking at the best possible outcome. They are looking at the catastrophic outcome and then planning advanced countermeasures to stop it from happening. They control the environment to prevent the disaster.
Wow, that sounds exhausting. Living your life constantly simulating the worst-case scenario.
It comes with a really heavy cognitive load, absolutely. But the source makes a very important distinction here, and we need to reframe this for people. This tightness or control is not pessimism. It is a responsibility-driven protective instinct.
Meaning they feel obligated to do it.
Yes, they would rather slow the pace of the entire team down than let a situation slide towards something irreversible.
So it's not that they think the world is inherently bad. It's that they feel personally responsible for preventing it from becoming bad.
Precisely. They are the gatekeepers of not yet.
Let's get under the hood then. The ME80 system breaks down energy into a matrix: IP, IQ, EQ, and manifestation. This is really the core of how the max energy system works. Can you walk us through how these layers operate and manifest for the SFFN?
Sure. Let's look at the 4 layers, starting from the inside out. First, you have the IP layer, or the inner value layer. For the SFFN, this is described as stable accumulation activation.
Stable accumulation. What does that mean in plain English?
Think of it as the bedrock. It's a heavy, grounded foundation. They aren't flighty. They accumulate data, experience, and rules to build a stable core. Imagine a heavy anchor. They value history, precedent, and proven methods. They do not change their core values easily.
Okay, so they are really grounded. They have this heavy anchor. What happens next?
Next is the IQ layer, or the emotional activation layer. This is where the speed comes in. It's characterized by intuition and speed judgment.
Wait, that seems like a contradiction. They have a heavy, stable core, the anchor, but a super fast intuition? Usually stable people are slow and steady.
That is the dynamic tension that defines them. The IP layer is steady, but the IQ layer is scanning rapidly. This explains why they can spot an anomaly instantly. They have a massive database of stability stored in that IP layer.
Oh, I see.
And the moment their IQ layer spots something in the environment that doesn't match that database, the alarm goes off.
That makes total sense. It's like a security guard who has memorized every single inch of a building. They don't need to think about it. A single open window just pops out at them because it conflicts with the stable image in their head.
That's a perfect analogy. Then we move to the EQ layer, which is the decision calculation layer. Here, it's described as emotional expression and release.
Does that mean they are highly emotional people?
Not in the crying at movie sense. It means their decision-making is tied to the release of this energy, which usually means alerting others. They can't just sit on the information. They have to push it out. If they spot a risk with their IQ that threatens their stability in the IP, the EQ layer demands they speak up. They have to sound the alarm.
And finally, the manifestation layer. How does all of this look to the outside world?
This is the energy released outward. For the SFFN, it results in impact, action, and manifestation. When they act, it is highly decisive. It's a strong external display. They don't suggest things. They command or halt. They are the ones who slam on the brakes.
So just to synthesize this all together, we have a stable core that feeds a rapid-fire intuition. When that intuition hits a red flag, it triggers a decision to release energy, leading to a decisive external action to stop a threat.
High alert, fast judgment, stable bearing. It is a really powerful combination.
I want to dive a bit deeper into this inner trait mentioned in the report. The superpower here is listed as advance warning. The source says they see risk first and only then allow action to proceed.
That only then is the friction point in a lot of organizations.
I bet. Like, why can't we launch the product yet? Because I have a bad feeling about the supply chain.
Right. The SFFN operates on the principle of early discovery. Their mind is a constant simulation engine. They capture anomalies before the information is even fully formed for everyone else. The source actually mentions they link scattered clues to create a risk outline.
That sounds almost like detective work or predictive analytics.
It really is. They might see a vendor pay an invoice a few days late. Then they hear a vague rumor about a raw material shortage. Then they notice a manager looking a bit stressed in the hallway.
And to anyone else, those are 3 totally separate, unrelated events.
Exactly. But to the crisis sensor, that is a flashing red light screaming supply chain collapse imminent.
And this explains their relationship with rules, doesn't it? I have worked with people like this who seem just obsessed with protocol.
They are, but they aren't obsessed with rules for the sake of bureaucracy. They tighten control to establish buffers. They want margins.
Give me an example of a buffer in this context.
Okay, think about driving. If the speed limit is 60, the SFFN wants you driving 55. Not because they are boring or hate speed, but because if a deer runs out into the road, going 55 gives you a buffer to brake. Going 65 does not.
So stability isn't about being conservative or boring.
No, not at all. Stability is about buying response time for the system. That is a key insight. If you drive right at the limit, you have 0 response time when things go wrong. The SFFN ensures you always have response time in the bank.
However, and there is always a however with these deep dives, living like a human radar dish has to come with a serious cost. You can't just run a high-voltage detection system 24/7 without burning out.
Let's talk about the shadow blind spots.
This is the heavy part of the report. The primary shadow trait is long-term tension.
I can feel that just hearing about it. My shoulders are tightening up.
Imagine that every single signal you receive is a potential alarm. A weird email subject line, alarm. A strange noise in the car engine, alarm. A frown on your partner's face, alarm. That pressure just keeps accumulating. It never really vents. And what's the consequence of that accumulation?
High alert without regulation creates distortion. It can enlarge minor signs into major threats. They start seeing ghosts.
Seeing ghosts. Like imagining problems that aren't there.
In a way, yes, it affects their emotional flexibility. If you are constantly bracing for impact, you can't really relax and flow with life. And the report notes something somewhat heartbreaking. They don't usually express fear openly.
The tighten emotion, right? That was in this.
Yes. They present a very cold, serious exterior. So while they're internally panicking or simulating disaster, on the outside, they just look stern, grumpy, or completely detached.
That creates a weird dynamic called the safe zone illusion.
Right, and this is critical for spouses or partners of SFFNs to understand. Even in a totally safe environment, say a family vacation in Hawaii internally, the SFFN is simulating the next wave of risk.
They're thinking, what if the flight home is canceled? What if the hotel loses the reservation? Is that potato salad sitting in the sun too long?
Exactly. They are never fully there. They are physically at the beach, but mentally they are in the crisis control room.
And if something does actually go wrong, even something small, do they feel validated? Like, I told you so.
Actually, the opposite. The cycle of self-blame is intense. They'll think, if only I had blocked more. If only I had double-checked that one detail. Even if it was a totally random act of nature, the SFFN often blames themselves for not foreseeing it. They take the weight of the world's randomness entirely on their own shoulders.
Wow. That internal pressure cooker plays directly into their social relationships, too. The report calls their communication style line holding.
Line holding is a perfect description. They state reminders up front, but, and here's the massive communication gap, they rarely explain the specific worry behind those reminders.
So they just say, don't do that. Instead of explaining the whole simulation, they just ran in their head.
Exactly. They are direct and concise. They point straight to the problem, check the brakes, don't sign that contract, get down from there.
I can see the dual effect here. On one hand, having someone like that around brings a huge sense of peace of mind. You know they absolutely have your back.
That's the positive side. It is caretaking peace of mind, but the negative. People feel restricted. They feel pressured. It's kind of like living with a strict parent, even if you are peers.
Right. They become these line-keeping gatekeepers.
Yes. In their relationships, safety and distance coexist. They keep you safe. But that constant vigilance creates an emotional wall. It is really hard to be intimate and vulnerable when you are permanently standing guard.
Let's pivot slightly to where this personality type absolutely shines. The business world. If you are a CEO or you're building a team, why do you need an SFFN? Because based on what we've said, they might sound like they would just slow down a fast-paced startup.
In the early break things phase, maybe. But for commercial value, their impact is massive. Their core advantage is advanced risk identification. Look, in business, problems are expensive, lawsuits are expensive, recalls are expensive. The SFFN prevents the expense entirely.
Because they perceive the brakes before the accident occurs.
They drive repair and scene control. But here is the irony that I really love about this profile. When a crisis actually does hit, when the building is actually on fire, metaphorically speaking, the SFFN is very often the calmest person in the room.
Really? After all that anxiety, I would assume they would be the first to panic.
Quite the opposite, because they have already simulated the scenario 10 times in their head while everyone else was ignoring it. Everyone else is panicking because they are surprised. The SFFN is thinking, okay, scenario C has occurred. I have a plan for this. Activate protocol 4. They stabilize the order before solving the problem.
That is incredibly valuable. They stop the bleeding while everyone else is still figuring out they've been cut.
And they track the root cause. They don't just fix it and move on. They ensure it never, ever happens again.
So looking at the Max Energy report, what are the recommended professional fields for a crisis sensor? Where do they really thrive?
It's no surprise that risk and compliance is at the top of the list. Identifying logic gaps, finding legal red lines, auditing.
They're the ones you want reading the fine print on a merger.
Absolutely. Operations and process control is another huge one. maintaining precision in really complex systems like manufacturing or logistics. They can literally feel the rhythm of a factory floor and know when a machine is about to fail just by the sound.
Crisis management seems obvious given the name.
It is, taking over and stabilizing emergencies. And finally, safety and quality assurance, acting as the final defense line. If you are building airplanes, you want an SFFN signing off on the final safety check.
You definitely do. You do not want the big picture visionary checking the bolts on the airplane wing. You want the crisis sensor who is up at night worried about the exact torque settings.
Precisely. You want the person who physically cannot sleep until they know it is right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to try and synthesize this. If we step back, what is the essence of the SFFN crisis sensor? Because it feels like a heavy existence, but a really noble one.
I think the golden sentence from the conclusion of the report sums it up beautifully. Their true value is keeping not yet happened dangers outside the door.
Keeping not yet happened dangers outside the door. That's almost poetic.
It really is. We need to shift our perspective on them. Whether you are an SFFN yourself, or you live with one, or manage one. When we understand their alertness, not as anxiety, and not as negativity, but as responsibility, that tightness transforms.
It stops being annoying.
It stops being annoying and starts being seen as the force protecting the whole system. They are the irreplaceable safety foundation. They carry the worry so that you don't have to.
That is a powerful takeaway. So I want to leave you, our listener, with a provocative question today. Think about your own life, your workplace, your family dynamics. Who is the gatekeeper? Who is the person you might have written off or mistaken for being just strict or a worrier?
And ask yourself, how much safer are you? How many disasters have you missed completely just because that person exists in your life? You will never know the bullets you dodged because they stood in the way.
It definitely changes the way you look at them. Now, if this resonated with you, if you suspect you might be an SFFN crisis sensor, or you really want to understand how to better communicate with one, you need to check out the source material for this deep dive.
Yes, this entire analysis comes from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. It is a fascinating, incredibly deep system.
You can learn more by visiting their official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
And for our listeners who want to search on social media, you can look up Max Energy U or MedEnergy on Facebook. There is a wealth of information there on all the profiles.
Definitely worth a click. Embrace your inner traits or appreciate the traits of those around you. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Stay safe out there.
See you next time.